Back in 2009, technically 2008 is when the interview came out, but it wasn't fully translated until 2009, where Oda was asked a question, and the question was, who does Nami like, right? His response and his answer to this question was, well, Nami does see the good qualities of all her crewmates, but I don't think there will be any sort of romance on that crew. Now, most people take this as Oda saying, or, Oda essentially claiming that there's going to be no romance on the crew. Now, if you ask anyone who understands the English language really well, I don't think it's not a definite no. I don't think just means either a maybe or he's not entirely sure if that's the route he's going to go with, right? And so many One Piece fans try to use this claim, use what he said to essentially try and devalue or try to disregard any sort of romance between the crew for whatever specific reason they may have, such as they don't see romance within the crew, their siblings, or their family, or some other nonsensical reason. And the reason why I call it nonsensical is because the Straw Hats are not a nuclear family, they are a found family, and many pieces of fiction include found family, is a very popular trope. And in that found family, many people get together, they fall in love. It's that simple. In fact, aren't your husband, your wife, or your partner a part of your family? So that's why that kind of statement is kind of, not a serious excuse to say that there will be no romance in the crew. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That is another video that I made in regards to it. The reason why I want to talk about this specifically is because for many years, many people believe that there should be no romance in the crew, or just romance in general, because the rest of that statement of the answer to that question is that he doesn't want to depict romance in his manga because that's not what young boys enjoy, which I always found funny because Shonen Jump, the same manga that One Piece is in, has many different rom-coms in it. Now, you can make a argument or a debate about whether or not the rom-coms are legitimately written well, but there are rom-coms in a magazine that is called Shonen Jump. Shonen meaning young boys or young teens, that young demographic. And he believes that, or at least at the time believed that, boys were not interested in it. And he did not want to depict that, and that he also told his female readers that if they want that, they should go read something else, which kind of was like, that's a crappy statement, because that shouldn't mean that female writers who do or female readers, I should say, who do shipping stuff in One Piece should just look at something else. That in my opinion was not a well statement from Oda. Regardless, I do believe that since 2009, 2008, when he first said this, he has changed. He has changed dramatically about his view, his opinion about romance. And here's why I'm going to tell you I believe this to be the case. Chapter 1158 of One Piece came out earlier this week, and it depicted a continuous storyline about romance in terms of Shaki, Gloriosa, and even just romance in general. So this has been going on since the post-time skip, and it's been a constant showcase of romance within a story. Maybe it was only with a minor character or a character that's not more part of the main cast, or even there is a member of the main cast, a member of the Straw Hats who is linked in a romantic sort of storyline, involved in a romantic storyline in an arc. For example, WCI, right? And this is constant throughout the post-time skip, where he does depict romance. Way more than I think people actually realize. And it makes me go back to that statement he made back in 2009 where he didn't want to depict romance. And all of a sudden I'm like, I guess Oda has changed. He's changed his mind. That's why I don't think isn't a hard no, but I don't think is he's not sure. Now, I know some will claim that he's specifically talking about, within the Straw Hats, right? Sure, I guess you can make that claim because the question was about, who Nami liked. But the fact that he went on to talk about how like boys are not interested in romance, I think doesn't really fit that narrative. Because if he truly believes still that romance isn't something that young boys liked, he would not be depicting it as much as he did. In fact, he would have probably kept it the same as the pre-time skip, where in pre-time skip you barely had any romance, right? But in post-time skip, all of a sudden we've seen more depiction of romance constantly. I made several videos talking about it, analyzing what his view of romance is. And in chapter 1158, it's really telling about how Oda views certain romances that we also kind of got a glimpse of in an SBS in regards to the Kuja Emperor's love sickness, as well as just patterns and parallels and just constant similar writing that he has portrayed throughout the story, including with canon pairings that actually, became canon in the story. So in chapter 1158, we see technically more romance depicted, where Roger approaches Rayleigh about a supposed love letter, according to Roger, that Rayleigh got for him to meet with Shaki. We don't know exactly what happened during this meeting, but we can safely assume that Shaki wanted to proclaim her love for Ray and that she wanted to be with Ray. Rayleigh was interested in the idea of it, but he didn't want to be tied down. Now, that could just be as it is, that he just didn't want to be tied down, that he just didn't want to just be with one person. Or we could maybe look at it in a different way, such as Rayleigh saw that Roger really liked Shaki. Like, insanely liked her. The issue is that Roger kind of didn't view her in the right way, calling her a treasure, saying that they should take her from the Kuja pirates and, go and find her like she's a treasure chest. Now, this could just be Roger during this time period where he is younger, where he did not understand like the concept of romance, very similar to how like a lot of men view sometimes women as like nothing more than based off how sexy they are, which unfortunately a lot of the One Piece community believes is how romance should be played out in the story, which honestly makes me angry. But I think it's in a very similar manner. Now, when we go see Roger and the Roger Pirates arrive at Pirate Island and go to Shaki's bar, Roger's still, infatuated with Shaki. However, Shaki is shown to have feelings for Ray. She's blushing, she's asking about Ray, where he is. Roger, tells her that he's not feeling well, he's on the ship, while we see Rayleigh on the ship singing Bing Sake. Clearly he was lying, right? And then we see Shaki pouting, she's sad, and Roger looking at her. While Gloriosa, tackles him and tells him how much she missed him, how much she loved him, how much she wants to be part of his crew, and Roger just did not want anything to do with it because he doesn't like clingy people. And which, side note, Gloriosa, come on. If Roger is telling you what he doesn't like, why are you still doing it? Like, come on. Like, it's so weird, Like, why is she knows why he doesn't like her, so why not change? Part of being in a romance, part of being with somebody, wanting to be with someone, is that you change. You don't change to the point where like you completely become someone else, but you change in a way that they can appreciate you more. If he's telling you that you're too clingy, or like you're just too much, just lower it. Calm down. Go from 11 to like an 8. You can still show affection. You can still show like how much you're interested, but you could change. There's nothing wrong with changing a little bit, but she doesn't do that, right? And what I found interesting is that Roger looks over at Shaki and sees her reaction, sees how much she's pouting, and how much what appears to him to be how much she likes Rayleigh. And to him, which is something that I found really cool with this panel, is that he showcased a sense of maturity. And I'll tell you why. Usually whenever you are writing, romance or characters in a romantic setting, The one thing that you must always keep in mind is that the best type of romances are always the one where one of the characters thinks of the other character's happiness. First and foremost, right? It could be a mutual thing, or it could just be one sided until maybe eventually that partner in that relationship feels something back, right? But the one thing that is very important, and this you could see in a lot of real life relationships, you can even ask your parents, you can even ask anyone in a relationship. The most important thing in a relationship for anyone is to see their partner happy, right? To just see them be happy about something, whether it's giving them gifts, whether it's showcasing how much you love them. Their happiness is one of the most important things to you, and you want to keep it that way. That's how a healthy relationship works, right? And Roger, I think, during these 3 panels, I think truly showcased that he understood that. He saw how happy Shaki was asking about Ray. He sees how sad she is when Ray isn't there, right? And despite his own feelings, despite his own attraction to Shaki, which I think was genuine, he just didn't know how to fully understand how he should act in front of her, which it's kind of funny because you kind of could see that with the way Gloriosa acts with Roger. When he sees her walking away and turns back to Rox and Big Mom and stuff to have a drink with them, he has a thought. In that thought, he talks about, "Damn it, Rayleigh, why aren't you here?" Meaning that Ray did not want to see Shaki because of these conflicted emotions and feelings he's probably having, right? And he's angry at Rayleigh, not just because Rayleigh is the one that gained Shaki's heart, in my opinion, but he hates the fact that Rayleigh isn't there to make Shaki happy. He wants her to be happy. He made the realization that the only way that she truly is happy is by having Rayleigh there, having his setting up the person he liked with his best friend, essentially. Because that's what would make her happy. And he cares about her happiness. That is genuine love right there. Right? That is the genuine love of a person. He understood that he more than likely did not have a shot anymore. That she really was infatuated with Ray, and he had to move on. But he wasn't upset with Ray. He wasn't angry at Ray, even though he did showcase some anger. It was more like, "Damn it, Ray. I know I can't be with her, but at least come here. Make her happy. That's what I care about." And if that makes you happy as well, because like Rayleigh stated that he has an interest in being with her, legit, just come here and just hang out. You don't have to do anything, but I want to see both of you happy. To me, that's my interpretation of that moment and of Roger's thought. And it's funny because Rayleigh does have an interest in her, he specifically states. Now, you can make the interpretation that the reason why Rayleigh didn't really, get with Shaki, despite the fact they did meet, maybe has to do with the fact that he knew that Roger really liked her. And he didn't want to get away with that. He wanted his best friend's happiness to matter a lot. And I think Roger at some point probably realized that he's not going to get with Shaki. Shaki's not going to, be showcase affection to him just like she's doing with Ray. And I think at some point he made that realization and wanted them to be happy. And he wanted them to be together because that's what he truly thought was the best for both Rayleigh, one of his best friends, and Shaki, the person he had a infatuation with, right? That showcases maturity. That showcases maturity is on Roger's side. He may still have feelings, he may still have a crush, but he understands that maybe it's time to move on. As long as they are happy, if they got together, then you know what? I'll be happy. And that is a very good sign of maturity, right? And we also see that Shaki does suffer from the love sickness. I made a video about the Kuja Empress, the good, bad ending stuff, about the paths of the Kuja Empresses. I did not think that Shaki would gain the love sickness, but apparently I am wrong, and I am okay to admit that. So, unfortunately, I don't have enough information about Rayleigh and Shaki's relationship. The only thing we know is about, what happened 40 years later, where we see them as Shaboti. In order to make a proper conclusion, I think what we need to see is a little bit more about the relationship. Maybe, Shaki does end up on God Valley and they go save her. Rayleigh is the one that saves her. Then we see exactly how that conversation occurs and like what their bond is through the years. Until we see that, we can't really make a logical conclusion exactly what occurred, how she was able to, not suffer from the love sickness anymore. Because, 40 years later, they are still hanging out with each other. They are still have some sort of respect for each other in some sort of way. I know people are claiming that, Rayleigh's a womanizer. He goes around and cheats on her. Some people claim it's an open relationship. I think at the end of the day, what Shaki mentioned about, him sleeping at someone else's, another woman's house or whatever, I think that was a joke. You usually see it at sitcoms about, like, Married with Children. That's a very popular, like, comedy trope, comedy bit that they do as well. So it could be that. And it's not like she was actually being serious about it. And Rayleigh, the whole thing about I love young woman. He said that after saving Kami from being attacked by the prison guard or the auction guard, right? That could literally mean that he doesn't like seeing young women get hurt. And so he used hockey to knock out the auction guard to save her from even more beatings, right? And he could literally be like, I like young girls. So he doesn't like seeing young girls get attacked, right? We also never see him, like, get involved with other women. He literally could have tried something with maybe Hancock or something like that, but he never did, or maybe even Nami, maybe even Kami, whatever, right? But he never did anything, so we cannot make that assumption yet until we actually see an actual panel that really showcases that Rayleigh is as he is, right? Or as people claim that he is. So until then, I'm also gonna leave that aside and not make a proper conclusion, because at the end of the day, we still don't have enough information in regards to that, as well as what their actual relationship between Shaki and Rayleigh was. So we cannot come up with a proper conclusion. At least I can't, right? So I'm not going to make an assumption and make a actual claim about what is happening here, right? But let's move on and talk about more about, Oda's depiction of romance and his constant use of romance. Another part of this chapter that I think really showcases just how badly the One Piece community does not understand what makes a good romance, and that is that Rox, apparently, is no longer interested in Shaki the way Roger and the other characters are with her. Because he apparently found someone. And they're expecting a kid, which we would assume is Blackbeard. But that's important. Because Oda is once again showing you his view of romance. Not only the maturity of Roger and understanding that the happiness of Shaki and Rayleigh is more important than his own feelings. Rox finding a woman, finding a partner, I should say, and loving that partner to the point of having a kid prevents him from acting like a simp or having hard eyes for Shaki and fawning over her. That is true love. He found someone that he really respected, that he really loved, to the point to have children with them. I don't know why I said with them, but yeah, to have children with them, and he's happy. He's like a happy dad, and he's no longer acting like that towards Shaggy. She's disappointed, but that's the point. Oda is showcasing to you that it doesn't matter how much a character views a character as hot. A lot of people in the One Piece community only think or trying to claim that Roger fumbled hard because he didn't get with Gloriosa, they got with Rouge instead, that kind of thing, and most of Roger, the way he interacted with her was because of how beautiful she was. I'm not saying that his feelings weren't genuine, right? But most of the people who were infatuated with Shaki was because of her beauty, But Oda once again showed that beauty is only skin deep, Beauty does not make, you falling in love for just beauty is not the proper way to fall in love. Another example I can give you is the way Harold fell in love with Ida, but did not fall in love with what was her name? Edna. something you know who I'm talking about, the Loki's mom, right? And he loved Ida more than her. Yes, he cried when she passed away because Harold is someone who's compassionate and cares about people, right? Of course. But his love was with Ida. He wanted to marry her, but unfortunately he could not because of diplomatic reasons, which, that's a different argument for another day. But that's an example that people will fall in love, not just because of someone's beauty, but who they are on the inside, their personality. That's what matters most. And Oda understands this. Oda really does. A lot of the One Piece community does not. Which, why there's really weird reasons for ships, right, in the One Piece community. Because they for some reason believe that attractiveness, having a hot character as your partner, is all you need in writing. But that's not how that works. It never is. It's all about a person connecting with another person and falling in love with that person because of that strong emotional connection. Oda not only showcases like a maturity of how people should like let go of their their feelings for somebody, if it means it can bring happiness to not only two people that they really cared about, but also his ideology and why he believes that characters being with other characters not because of looks but because of their personality is far more important. And that is something that I try very hard to tell people, that is more important. You can make hot female characters, you can make hot male characters, you could pair them together, but unless there's an emotional connection, it's never going to work. It's bad writing. You cannot just make that claim based off like a character's appearance. You can't do that. You have to think about their personalities. Do they match well? Like, why do they like the other person? There has to be reasons for it. You have to build on that. Build on that throughout the story and just slowly connect to it. Can have them have that connection that they will fall in love and only see the other person because of how much love they have for each other. Right? I don't know when we'll see the possible connection that Roger and Rouge has had, but I truly believe that if this is the way Oda writes his type of romances, he's going to make them very similar to each other. I truly believe that. And whether or not he does anything with the Straw Hats, I think more than likely, whatever romance he picks for the Straw Hats, it's going to have that emotional bonding connection. It's not just going to be about, oh, this person's hot, let's pair the MC with the hot character. Or, have one character simping for another character, and because of that character's simping or being just in love with that character should end up with that character. There has to be emotional connection, and if you don't have that, it doesn't really matter about those points. It really does not. Because that's not how Oda views things. At least how I interpret and analyze his romance writing. And I think that's very important. Right? So, it's very interesting that this chapter not only showcases more romance, which, like, what year is this? 2025? Like 13, 14, whatever, 15, maybe even longer than that. Years ago, he had a different opinion about romance. And you kind of saw that opinion of romance pre-time skip, because you don't really necessarily have a lot of romance involved. But ever since then, post-time skip, he has found a fondness. He has found an interest in writing romance. And you see it through each and every arc post-time skip. Maybe not in Punk Hazard, because it was not really a moment. I guess unless you want to do Zoro Tashigi, but like, right? Ever since Dressrosa, ever since all of that, more romance has been depicted. In fact, Elbaf, this flashback, we've seen more romance in this arc alone. Love is freedom. He's trying to write romance as a big part of the story of One Piece, and he's starting it in Elbaf. And I applaud him for it, because I know he once said that he's afraid of fans being or losing interest in a character if they fall in love with another. I get that. You see other shonen, manga do a lot of this. And it's all about how, like, the perception of, like, the shippers who lost become, where they get angry, they get upset, they send threats, death threats, letters, whatever. I get that. It's terrifying. That is a very terrifying thing. But it's your story. If that's what you want to do, if you want to explore the romance aspect, you should do it. You know, people will get angry no matter what choice you choose in terms of romance. People will get angry, people will get confused, people will be discouraged. But you still have to pick what you want and what you believe. And based off of my constant analyzing the romance aspect of his writing, I think he's going to value a ship that focuses more on emotional connection, emotional bonding. And unless your ship has that, it may not be written well enough yet, at least, to the point where he might connect that into an actual romance with any of the Straw Hats, right? I truly believe that Oda has changed his mind. I truly believe that in Elbaf, throughout all of Elbaf, throughout most of post-time skip, Oda is much more interested in writing romance than ever before. And I'm very curious to see how he continues doing that path. Because romance, honestly, is one of the best tools to use for not only character motivation, but also just overall story building. It doesn't even have to be romance with characters, you know? It could be literally just romance where, like, for example, Romance on the Romance of Adventure, right? But his character writing with pairings has been really well, in my personal opinion, post-time skip. And I truly believe that interview years ago, 2009, 2008, whenever it was, his attitude has changed towards romance. Will he do something with Straw Hats? We won't know. We will have to wait and see. But he's clearly very interested in writing romance, and he's very clearly enjoying it. So I can't wait to see what Oda does. I really enjoyed this chapter in terms of the romance writing aspect of One Piece and Oda's writing. So I'm very curious because there's still a lot more we need to know. So there's Rayleigh's and Shaki's relationship during the 40 years, as well as what the relationship with Roger Rouge was. There's also one other thing that we can talk about, and that is the ending of the chapter in regards to Shamrock and Shanks, right? And who the father could be. I know it's been a debate. We do know that they got their red hair from their mother. We see essentially the backside of whoever their mother is. She has the same red hair because he uses the gray tones that he uses for Shank's hair with her hair as well. Meaning that that's very possible. That is a strong connection to something. You know, if he only does or uses gray like tones only on that specific hair color or like that specific family, that means there's something else. That means there's some sort of special lineage about that family. I'm very curious to see. As to who the father is, I know a lot of people believe that it is still Garlic, right? I'm 50-50 on it now because while I understand that it could still be Garlic who went there and then had a relationship with this person, the way he wanted a hunt tells me that that might not be the case. It's very possible that he saw this woman with her red hair. That's what Imu would be interested in. And that's why Imu then decided to have the hunt, you know, during the God Valley incident. So there's something very important about this red-haired woman, right? And Garling more than likely witnessed this woman having kids. And it's very possible that Imu and Garling made a connection that these kids are going to be very important in shaping their future. Maybe it has something to do with the mural, maybe it has something to do with the ancient civilization, the void century. We don't know yet. I still don't really am like confident to say that Garling is Shamrock and Shank's dad. It might be someone else. I can't wait to figure out. Maybe we'll see more in the next chapter. But yeah, it's going to be very interesting. Overall, I enjoyed this chapter a lot in terms of the analyzing the Oda's writing in terms of romance. So I'm excited to see what he does next. Let me know what you think in the comments below. And thank you so much for watching. And I'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.